What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Robski coming at you with yet another book report. It's been a very long while since I've done one, since I've mostly done sports. But I just got done reading this book, and let me tell you, I might have just found a new series that I'm just absolutely falling in love with. This book ends with kind of a thriller, great book. I gotta. This book improved on the first one. I absolutely love the first one. But anyways, if you guys haven't picked these up, you guys have got to read these. Again, this is the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. And this is the second in the series called Caliban's War. The first one is called Leviathan Wakes, which I absolutely loved. I fell in love with the characters. But this second book, like I said, I just got done reading this. The second book is even a lot better than the first, and the first was awesome. And the second one, just by the last page, put this book over the top. I mean, I'm just blown away. So let's get to it. And another thing is I'm watching the series on Amazon Prime. It's a great series as well. But in the first book, just to rehash, basically you get the gist of this universe. There's the Belt, there's Mars, and then there's Earth. And there's inner politics going, and basically there's this ship crew that's investigating this super weapon called the protomolecule. Okay, now I've already done a review of Leviathan Wakes. But you get introduced to the crew, Holden, Amos, Naomi, and Alex. And then, of course, my favorite character, Detective Miller, who ends up boarding a infested station called Eros, and he drives it into Venus. And then that's the last you hear of Miller in the first book. Now, this book, the second book, goes into much deeper detail of what's going on as far as the inner political game. There's a brand new character. I don't even know where to start. But you got to make sure to read the first book to understand this. But this book is, like I said, it got better. It's better than the first one. Anyways, it clocks in at 595 pages, and the plot line kind of goes like this. We're introduced to a new character named Christian Avasarala. She's an elderly woman who is a diplomat for Earth. And then we're also introduced to the superhuman Marine, who's a woman, who's about 6'7", 6'8", according to the book, Bobby Draper. Now, Bobby Draper, the book opens with her and her platoon of Marines fighting off these United Nations Marines on Earth. But they didn't realize that there was a monster after them. And she shot at this monster, and she didn't know what it was. So it starts off with everyone getting killed in this incident on a station called Ganymede, except for Bobby Draper. Okay, so Bobby Draper is a witness to this new super weapon. And then you have people on Mars and people on Earth. They're getting ready to go to war because of the super weapon, and they don't know what it was. The only one who does is Bobby Draper, who's gunnery sergeant. So Avasarala calls down basically representatives from the Martian military go down to Earth to have a peace conference, and along with them they take Bobby Draper. But Bobby is specifically told by her commanding officer to not say what she saw. She was told to say that it was a mistake and the Marines messed up. She was instructed to keep that piece of information. What really killed everybody was that monster. And she was instructed by her commanding officer to withhold the information. Avasarala interviews her, and she knows something's up. And then so Bobby Draper comes out again with the UN Martian conference, and then Avasarala gets it out of her what it really was, and then the Marines, they discharge her. So she's like, "You're a traitor, and you no longer work for us." So Avasarala, who's just impressed with the super Marine woman, hires her as her personal bodyguard. Okay. Meanwhile, while that's all going on, you have the crew, our four main heroes, that just keep getting better development. It's James Holden, Naomi, Amos, and Alex. They're on a mission. They meet up with this man called Prax, who lost his daughter May. And May had a disease, and these doctors, one of them named Dr. Strickland, was working with her. They steal May, and they take her off Ganymede, and they don't know what's going on. So Holden and his crew, they meet up with Prax, and Prax tells them what's going on. And so Holden had some friction with the OPA guy, Fred Johnson, who's one of the factions of the belt is called the OPA. And so Holden gets in a fight with Fred and asks Fred if he had anything to do with the protomolecule. Fred fires Holden, and so Holden's kind of no longer in contract with Fred Johnson. And then while this is going on, Holden's been more aggressive lately, so his crew members are kind of after him. You know, he's been dating Naomi, and then Naomi, she kind of splits up with him because Holden's not acting like himself. You know, Holden's described as a righteous man, someone who does things by the book. Okay, so all this is going on. They're looking for Prax's daughter, and Prax joins the crew haphazardly. You know, once Holden gets fired by Fred Johnson, that's when things started going up. He becomes happier. He gets Naomi back. And basically, the crew had an epiphany, which was really cool because they just said, well, we need to figure out who we are. And then Amos is like, I'm just a grease monkey. I just want to be a mechanic. And then Alex is like, I'm obsessed with flying. And then Naomi's like, I'm the engineer. And they're like, okay, Holden, like, you're the captain. You've always been the captain. Holden cries because Holden's all teary-eyed because they forgive him. And so they're back. And now their assignment is to go find May, find Prax's daughter's May. Okay, that's what they're there for. They sent out a message to the whole universe about Prax's daughter, and then a bunch of people are inspired, so they send in money to fund the mission. And while that was going on, Prax's ex-wife also made a smear campaign against him. So that's another story within the story. That's what I love about the second book, Caliban's War, is there's a lot of different plots going on. But okay, so the cool part, so we got these two. So we got Prax, James Holden and his crew searching for his daughter May, and then we got Avasarala and Bobby doing their thing on Earth now. So Bobby Draper is no longer a Martian Marine. She's a hired bodyguard by Avasarala. And Avasarala just turns really cool in this. I mean, she's a hard woman, but, you know, interesting. I mean, these characters are really interesting. So they go out, and there's this super villain whose name's Jules Pierre Mao, who Julie Mao was his daughter, and in the first book, she was overtaken by the protomolecule, and she was in charge of, you know, the Aero Station. She actually became the main brain of the Aero Station by being morphed into the protomolecule thing. Okay, and that's when, you know, Miller met up with her, and then they drove that station in Venus. Okay, so they're going on. So Jules Pierre Mal is a supervillain. He's got these other scientists working for him. One of them is Dr. Strickland, and then they have this admiral. His name's Gwyn, is his last name. And so Avasarala finds out about Holden and their mission. So Avasarala tells Bobby that they need to go and meet up with the crew. Meanwhile, while this is happening, there's inner politics. So not only is Earth and Mars having friction, people in the United Nations and Earth are having friction, and there's Pierre Mao's people, headed by Admiral Gwyn. They're plotting against some of these other people on Earth, and they find out about what Avasarala is doing. So Avasarala eventually meets up with Holden on the Rocinante, and then obviously there's Bobby, and everyone's just impressed with Bobby. Bobby's just this superhuman killing machine marine woman, and Alex and Amos start flirting with her, and that was kind of cool too. But anyways, so they all meet up, and the Jules Paramal's crew finds out about it, so they send Gwyn after him. So a faction of the United Nations is going after, and they're going to shoot the Rocinante, which is Holden's ship that has them all, to try to cover it up. Well, eventually Avasarala pulls some strings, and there's a part of the Martian Navy up there, so they get the Martian Navy to help them out, as well as some of the United Nations people, other faction United Nations know what's going on. It's really cool because the high point of the book is when Holden, their crew, they recruit the Marines, the United Nations. They're going after these other people within the United Nations, and so it all comes down to they come to a standoff, and basically then there's just chaos going. Everyone's firing everyone. There's super destroyers. There's cruisers. There's all this stuff going on. Okay. Well, the people led by Admiral Gwyn's, the resistance, the people, they're Pierre Mal's people, they fire the proto-molecule weapon. And there's all these like half human, half monster things that are going after people. One of which the crew, Amos and Holden, disposed of, by the way. And it was also what Bobby Draper found out about. Well, they shoot out all these monsters, and they're like, okay, we're going to take all these people down. We're going to use the weapon that we've been concealing. But the weapon turns on them. And then so eventually Gwyn surrenders, and Holden goes down there to investigate what's happening. Meanwhile, they get to IO station where May's being held. That's Prax's daughter. So Prax, Amos, and Bobby Draper go down to get the daughter. Eventually what happens is they get Prax's daughter. Holden kills Gwyn, and they get back safe. And then Bobby Draper has a standoff again with the monster, and she wins the battle. Which again was close. So they all go back up to the Rossi, and Avasarala eventually captures Jules Mal, and so he's got him under custody. There's a guy named Aaron Wright who basically Avasarala becomes even more powerful because she didn't want to, but she had to. So they capture Jules Paramal, and they think everything's good, and everything's supposed to be good. And they got the bad guys, and Fred Johnson uses the missiles that he hijacked from UN, and he shoots out the rest of the proto-molecule monsters. And so everything's supposed to be all good, but it's not. So at the end of the book, at the end of Caliban's war here, after all that's been settled and everything's supposed to end happy ever after, from Venus there becomes like this. They describe in the book it's like this huge like biological. It's like a ship, but it's like this proto-molecule like learns, so it's weird, but it like has a mind of its own. And they send this super ship out, and it's just taking out any resistance. And so the book ends with this floating in the air. But there's another part, and this is what put this last part is what put this book over the top for me. Was at the very end, the epilogue, it shows Holden and Naomi talking about it, and like, well, we're going to figure out what we're going to do. And then a character comes back that we left for dead. He comes back and confronts Holden, and the book ends. Kind of reminds me of the Dark Tower 3 when they ended at a cliffhanger. Anyways, I'm going to rate this book 10 out of 10. Like I said, if you haven't read the Expanse series, pick it up. It's a great series. It's on Amazon Prime. I love it. But reading this book, like I said, the first book was like a 9 or a 10. I mean, it was a really good book. But this started to make it really good. I absolutely love this book. Again, it's James S. Corey, Expanse number 2 in the series, called Caliban's War. Make sure to read Leviathan Wakes, and then definitely read Caliban's War. It gets even better. This is Rob out.